In the summer of 1940, with armies clashing in Europe and the Japanese on the move in the Pacific, it seemed inevitable that America would be drawn into another world war. The country was going to need more soldiers than in any previous war, and large new bases on which to train them. That summer, Major John McQueen received a special order from Commandant of the Marine Corps, Major General Thomas Holcomb. In effect, the message was, select a pilot, get a plane, and find us a training center. McQueen, along with Captain Vern McCall, would spend the next 6 weeks flying along the coastline from Corpus Christi, Texas, to Norfolk, Virginia. Finally, circling over the Onslow County coast of North Carolina, they found what they wanted, tens of thousands of acres of undeveloped land on both sides of the New River, together with 14 miles of pristine, undeveloped Atlantic beach, interrupted only by a single inlet. It was an ideal area for training, for maneuvering large formations, and for artillery firing. And within 6 months it would become the site for the construction of a major military facility. The 110,000 acres spotted by Major McQueen was not an uninhabited, unclaimed expanse. Instead, there were farms and forests. There were homes and businesses. There were churches and cemeteries. And there was the New River fishing village called, ironically, Marines, named in 1841 after its founder, and home to many fishermen, watermen, and boat builders. Some 720 families lived here, many for multiple generations, and each had a vested stake in their property, community, and heritage. The power and priorities of the War Department, however, outweighed the concerns of residents, and each family was ordered to vacate between the 1st of June and the 1st of September 1941. In February 1941, Congress approved the release of $1.5 million for the purchase of this privately held land. Almost immediately, an army of surveyors, appraisers, and photographers descended on the New River area from all directions. A signpost was placed in front of every structure, with the area and tract number listed. But out of the thousands of appraisal photographs made of properties taken over by the U.S. government in 1941, only a few show people still inhabiting the dwellings from which they would soon have to depart. Sometimes only a family pet is visible, defending its territory. Some remained out of defiance, or in order to harvest a crop which would be the only source of income until they were compensated. Others, perhaps, had as yet no other place to go. In some photographs, there is a sense of bewilderment and apprehension. In others, pushback and defiance. Only a year earlier, a motion picture called The Grapes of Wrath had dramatized the plight of the migrant farmer faced with a similar situation.
I can't help that. All I know is I got my orders. They told me to tell you to get off, and that's what I'm telling you.
You mean get off my own land?
Oh, don't go to blaming me. It ain't my fault.
Whose fault is it?
I'm right here to tell you, mister, there ain't nobody gonna push me off my land. My grandpa took up this land 70 years ago. My pa was born here. We was all born on it. And some of us was killed on it.
But if New River landowners were angry, they kept it mostly to themselves. With the possible exception of Miss Sally Fonville, who was said to be so angry at the government when she lost her land that she said she wished Hitler had come over and gotten it all instead. But by September of 1941, quiet resignation had set in, and the remaining landowners made their final preparations to leave. There was the solemn business of moving the remains of people who had spent their lives building that which was about to disappear. There was the story of the woman who, after everything was carried from her family's home and loaded for moving, went back inside the empty house and swept all the rooms. It was an act that seemed symbolic of the washing of the dead in preparation for burial. In 1927, with the last of their 11 children grown, Isaac Fillmore Gillette and his wife Emma built a new house on the Duck Creek farm they had bought in 1904. The site was directly across from Brown's Inlet. A long pier stretched to a boathouse on the inland waterway that became known as Gillette's Landing. Mildred and Clifford Gillette, who had grown up on the farm, operated a camping site and boat rental business here, popular with sportsmen and fishermen. The home site itself was over a mile from the main road and located within a grove of towering pecan trees. When the Duck Creek Post Office was moved in 1929 to their area at Brown Sound, Mildred was appointed postmaster and transacted business from this window. She held that position until it closed 9 years later and canceled the final letter on October 15, 1938. Earlier in the year, Mildred had married John Dexter and was preparing to begin raising a family. And Isaac and Emma were looking forward to more grandchildren to help fill their waning years. But in the summer of 1941, Emma and Isaac held their last family reunion at Brown's Sound. Many of the grandchildren were there, including 2-year-old Emily, seen here with her father, John Dexter. Within a few weeks, Emily's sister Charlotte would be born. Everyone knew this would be the last time they could enjoy these surroundings. A few months earlier, the property appraisers and surveyors had arrived with their dreaded signpost. And in mid-June, the form letter arrived, speaking of eminent domain and fair, just, and reasonable compensation. But the final ironic chapter was still to come. The date was July 17th, and for the past month, an armada of destroyers and troop transport ships bringing Marines back from war games in Cuba had been massing, a mile off Onslow and Hearst Beach. The idea was to bring them ashore in Higgins boats in the form of a mock invasion, where they would storm the beach, cross over to the inland waterway, which must be crossed either in rafts, boats, or by swimming before reaching the mainland. But several of the boats had discovered Brown's Inlet, spotted by Major McQueen from his plane a year earlier. After making their way through the channel, they ended up at Gillette's Landing, where instead of storming a beach, the soldiers climbed up to the wharf and walked ashore. After dumping their gear in the Gillette front yard, the Marines bivouacked in the pecan grove next to the house. And Isaac Gillette, who had been born before the Civil War and had managed 2 farms and raised a family while World War I went on without him, would now leave Brown Sound with the soldiers who would soon fight World War II, literally on his doorstep. Time had moved on, and the children and grandchildren of the dispossessed New River landowners had settled into their lives. As the 50th anniversary of the Marine base approached, family histories were being assembled and recorded, and accounts of the exodus that occurred in 1941 were being published in newspapers and books. And for the first time, the Marine base began to allow landowner families to return to the home sites that they had not seen in a half-century. These excursions began with the Smith Road reunions. Smith Road ran about 2.5 miles from Route 24 to Bear Creek Road. Along it lay the working farms of brothers Asa and Cam Smith and their wives, Della and Jenny. Also, there was the farmstead of Frank Provost, who had married Mamie, the sister of Asa and Cam. The first 2 reunions were organized by Lucy Smith Culler, granddaughter of Asa. Lucy, along with brothers Edward Lee and Nobe Jr., had been born at this location along Smith Road and in this house. Later, a new house was built by their father, Nobe, only to be lost to the Marine base the following year. But the reunion was a joyous occasion, with a picnic on Asa's home site and an encouraging mixture of the young and the old to preserve the memory. Lucy Smith would attend the second Smith Road reunion some 11 years later. But with her health declining, a Marine escort was provided to deliver she and the daughters of Frank Provost, Della Gillette, and Ivy Provost to the various home sites.
I live right on the beach, and I was like, it's going to be a beautiful day today.
Now, Edward Lee took some pictures of that tree and matched them with trees from the old house. 4 days, and they matched. The limbs and everything.
So that's the only way you can know where you are, I guess, huh?
Yep.
Is there anything, dear? Is there anything left to your house?
When that house is over there, all is over there.
Right.
That road is still there. Yeah. I'm glad y'all gonna try to carry it back through the woods.
With the coming of the Marine base, the town of Marines had long since vanished, and families who had lived there and in the Courthouse Bay area held their annual reunions at Sneed's Ferry. Starting in 2001, and for the next 16 years, the October reunions returned to Courthouse Bay. Under the direction of Charlotte Dexter and sisters Emily and Mary, the landowners group was getting organized and had gained use of the Marine Officers Clubhouse for their annual Sunday-covered dish homecoming. The reunions had begun to attract the attention of the Marine Corps leadership and the media. And in the years to come, out of this interaction would spring the idea of a monument dedicated to the former landowners and residents of Camp Lejeune. In September of 2006, the third and final Smith Road reunion took place. This time the effort was led by Melanie Hartsfield Sheldon, brother Tim and sister Phyllis, who were the grandchildren of Cam and Jenny Smith. They had spent the past year preparing for the excursion at the Camp Lejeune Records Office, scanning land deeds and photographs to help identify landmarks in their search for bricks, fence posts, and other mementos. But now, Melanie had decided that the entire land record archive was a cultural resource worthy of preservation, and expanded her team to carry out this mission. Now that the scanning was finished, the team again reached out to the Marine base to find a location for a historical marker to recognize the former landowners. Initially, the plan was for a somewhat larger version of the bronze plaques, located around the base, with a list of landowner names and a map. But Charlotte Dexter was thinking on a larger scale, a granite monument in 3 sections with a new map as centerpiece and flanked on either side by a wall of names. The overall shape would invoke the memory of a typical Onslow County barn, such as found on Isaac Gillette's farm. The old 1941 Navy Department map, with its artificial boundaries, would not be used. Instead, the new map would show only geographical names and places that existed prior to 1941. Charlotte's composite rendering would draw from the 1983 Onslow Heritage Book compilation and the newly scanned deed and survey records now online. And each dot on the map represented the location of a landowner property and a family name to be engraved on the monument. The monument contract would be awarded to Wayne and Zachary Schaefer, a well-regarded father and son stonecutter team based in Wilmington. It would be probably the most challenging and painstaking project they had yet attempted. For the 75th anniversary of the Marine base, the Courthouse Bay reunion focused on the surviving descendants who, as children, were living at their family home sites in 1941. But by now, the pieces were in place to begin the monument construction, and the plans were revealed at this reunion, attended by Base Deputy Commander Colonel Michael Scalise. The monument site was inside the Lejeune Memorial Gardens, a solemn place of honor for fallen Marines, but offered to the former landowners group to commemorate their unique sacrifice. Fittingly, the location was within sight of the Montford Point Federal Cemetery, containing the transplanted remains of the ancestors of former landowners, including the father of Cam and Asa, moved from a cemetery on Smith Road in 1941. Charlotte's contact person was Fernando Schiefelbein, a Marine base operations specialist, who would coordinate with the Memorial Gardens Oversight Committee and the Landowners Group. Finally, In mid-2018, as the monument completion date approached, site preparation and foundation construction began. Soon, after the last name was etched into the granite and polished, and after a lapse of 77 years, a final reunion of the families of the New River would be set in stone.
This point is beautiful. I am so glad it's getting up, and I hope it'll be here a long time in remembrance of our families that came off the base.
Well, Camp Lejeune just didn't materialize, and it's all because of you folks. And these young devil dogs out there don't know that. But when we show them that monument out there, you see all these families out here? They gave everything. They gave their homes for you to train on this base. And with that map in the center, that Ms. Dexter and that I've been briefed on and all that, and I was privileged to be out there when they first put it on there, I get to tell them, you see this little dot up here? That's where you're standing. Now understand the rest of it. Every single dot on this monument means something. It means like there's somebody's home, somebody's structure was there. And it gives them a better appreciation of where they're at. Because these young devil dogs nowadays, they just come here, train, get deployed, and go do great things for this country. But they don't know the history of it, and that's why you got people like myself and all of you that do that. So I'm just glad to report that that monument out there that you have, it's well represented, everybody looks at it, and everybody's asking the right questions. All right? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.